Fabulous, right. So hi everyone, welcome to today's meeting of Children and Young People and Skills Scrutiny Review Board. So I'll just pop round again just to introduce myself like we normally do. So I'm Councillor Truella, Chair of the committee and Councillor for Oakwood Ward.
Councillor Falk, Alveston South Ward.
Carmel Ashby, Abbey Ward.
Councillor Richard Hudson, Chad North.
Councillor Matthew Oakwood Ward.
India Joe Howard, Derby.
I'm Sharon Buckby, I'm Director for Learning and Inclusion in Schools.
I'm Saki Babi, Councillor of Legrees Ward.
Councillor Irene Lonsdale for the Labour Board.
Councillor Sue Wright, Arboretum Ward.
Sue Amnon, Director of Early Help and Children's Social Care.
Andrew Kaiser, Head of Special Services.
Lindsay Stevens, Democratic Services Officer of the meeting.
Thank you guys. So we'll pop straight to the agenda. Got any apologies for tonight, Lindsay?
Yes, we have apologies from Marianne Riaz, Andy Smith and Matthew Tree.
I can confirm that there are no late items to be introduced. Anybody got any declarations of interest today at all? Fabulous. Some meetings of the last meeting that was held on the 15th of September. Is everybody happy that the minutes are agreed as true and correct?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Nice and quick. Right then, so we'll move on to our youth justice inspection outcome. So in the recent HM Inspectorate of Probation, so HMIP, for 2025, so Derby City Youth Justice Service was rated as outstanding in all areas. So I've got Andrew and Sue-Ann here who are going to give us an overview of this report. So Andrew, I'll pass over to you if that's all right, and we'll pop your presentation up.
Then I'll click through. My screen, so
I think you should share your screen and it should pop up on the big screen.
There you go.
okay. So yes, we're here to talk about Youth Justice Service inspection, which took place on the 30th of June. So just in terms of the overview, HMIP are the His Majesty's Inspectorate of Probation, and they're responsible for inspecting youth justice and probation services across England and Wales. So the HMIP looked across two broad areas of our work. So the quality of work delivered with children, working with the Youth Justice Service, and our organisational arrangements, and quality of work delivered with victims of crime. And that's something new to this inspection regime. Hadn't been inspected before in any of the previous inspection regime. So overall, headline, Derby was rated as outstanding, and I'll go through the various constituent elements of the inspection report and outcome. In terms of focus, the fieldwork was commenced on the 30th of June. I'm talking a moment about the evidence in advance that needed to be supplied before the inspection. And this was a one-week inspection of direct work with children, young people and families and victims of crime. The work around governance, leadership and the organisational arrangements was seen through the lens of that direct children, young people, families and victims. And I'll come on to another way that HMIP look at our work in a moment. So HMIP looked at the whole range of work that the service delivers. So that's children subject to bail or remand, court disposals, which are children obviously that have been to court, receive things like a youth restorative order or referral orders. Children made subject to out-of-court disposals, which is our prevention and diversion work in the service. And then young people made subject to custodial sentences between a certain time frame, which is on this slide. HMI also looks at our organisational arrangements for the delivery of work with victims and then individual casework through the victim worker. So work very much on the ground and again within a certain time frame of cases selected between 30th December and 28th Feb. One of the key things that HMIP pointed out and really liked was that we had a service vision which had been developed and produced with young people. So I've put the vision up on the first slide, which is what young people developed with us. It's been ratified by our board, and HMIP thought that gave a really clear message around what we wanted to achieve in Derby with working with our children. And then feedback from HMIP, effective joint working has set a strategic and operational direction to achieve positive change for children and helping to keep them and communities safe. So in terms of the process, we were advised around 3.5 weeks before the field that we needed to provide a range of evidence in advance, and this is what happens in a range of inspections and children's services. I've included some of the key things that HMI asked for, and prior to inspection, the idea was that there would be less burden on services in terms of the evidence in advance that was asked. It wasn't something that we really experienced in Derby. It was a huge amount of work to pull this together, get it submitted on time. So it included minutes of our Youth Justice Partnership Board, which span chairs, which has a range of people on the board, including Sharon, other statutory partners, and a range of voluntary service providers. And that's to look at the governance arrangements for the service to make sure there's challenging scrutiny for the delivery of the service. It's very much looking at how the partnership is supporting direct work with children, young people and families on the ground. So they were submitted on time. A copy of our latest Youth Justice Plan, which at the time of inspection was the 2024-25 Youth Justice Plan, and the accompanying performance data, so our first time entrant data, the number of children reoffending and the number of children who become first time entrants to the service were all submitted. Our staffing structure and what HMIP are looking at there is to make sure that there are a range of staff, because Youth Justice is a statutory multidisciplinary team. So key partners such as education, health, social care, police and probation should have representatives both at the board level and on the ground working directly with children, young people and families, as well as victims. Our narrative document, which is our self-evaluation form, which is about the service's view of where they are at any point in time in relation to the HMIP standards. So we are inspected against a whole range of standards for assessing practice, for planning delivery with children, young people and victims, and for the direct work that we do. So this was very much setting out all of those key performance measures, those key standards within the self-evaluation form for us to self-assess and for HMIP to get a flavour of how we view ourselves as a service. So do they know themselves well as a service? Do they know where they are in terms of our practice on the front line? And how do you know that? So it's quite a meaty document to pull together, but a useful exercise nonetheless. Our organisational data spreadsheet, which is something that HMIP provide to us, which was a look at key data in terms of 12 months back and at the current time to look at where we'd moved from and moved to. And that was a range of information around victims, number of children open to the service, gender and ethnicity breakdowns of young people accessing the service, etc. So quite a detailed look at the data. They wanted to look at our analysis and feedback from children, parents, carers and victims and any action plans that we had around participation, which we're able to supply. And then also a range of policies to make sure that we've got really key, consistent strategic documents in place for frontline practitioners around some of our key areas of practice. And you can see set out there, restorative justice, out of court disposals and risk work. Also, we submitted audits around the evaluation of some of our key work. So how do we know that our assessments, plans, interventions and direct work with children and victims is of good enough quality? So we submitted some of the quality assurance work that we submit to our board members, which is scrutinised and challenged there, back to HMIP, which included some of our victim work, which Remedy, who are our commission provider of victim services in Derby, were able to submit as well. And then to make sure that we've got a staff group that have the skills, knowledge and experience to deliver high quality services to children, young people, families and victims, we were made to provide an overview of our staff training, which is something submitted in the annual Youth Justice Plan as well, and demonstrated the range and breadth of training that staff had been through in the previous 12 months. There were other pieces of evidence in advance as well, which I kind of won't go into detail of, but it was a huge undertaking to pull it all together, track it to make sure that we covered everything off and made sure we submitted with the timeframes that HMIP had given us when they notified us of the inspection. So it's 3 weeks of really busy work leading up to the fieldwork week. But in terms of the fieldwork, what they looked at during that week were 31 cases of children, and that was children's brain open to subjective interventions, thresholds, And the number of cases is determined by the number of cases worked by the service overall, and it's a proportion of those cases and the size of the service. So it differs in different areas. So some bigger areas, bigger cities will have more cases that they look at, others slightly less, but for Derby it's 31. The inspection team also looked at 15 cases in restorative justice practice, and that was 15 cases of victim work. There were 2 multi case discussions, and so that work was around pulling in 2 cases where we'd worked directly with children, and then pulling the partner agencies in alongside the lead worker, so schools, victim workers, police, probation, social care, and look at how cohesively those services work together with children and young people as part of that process. There was something new called a showcase slot, which we chose our stop and search scrutiny panel, which we held at the quad across the road. So that was pulling together a group of children, police officers, and we took the deputy lead inspector across to look at some of the work that we do. And that's about young people challenging the police back around stop and search practice. And that informs police training, police policy around that particular area. And HMIP fed back that that was really innovative practice, something they're not seen in other parts of the country, and really effusive in that if you look at the inspection report, a lot of praise, and it's mentioned a number of times. There was an interview with myself on the final days, head of service, and it's really focused upon the support that I get and challenge, focusing upon the board as well in terms of what they can provide, what they have provided on the ground, and the support me to deliver the service in Derby. And then to set the scene on the first day of the inspection, myself, Sue Ann as the chair of the board, and Andy Smith, the DCS, we gave a presentation about the partnership, about the service in terms of where we'd come from since our last inspection in 2018 when we were rated as good, what we'd done in the intervening period, how we'd developed and improved the service, some of our key performance data, work around victims, and it really set the scene for what we're doing in Derby, what we're delivering. And I think it was a really positive start to the week in terms of how we were able to present that to the inspection team. And during the week, myself and the lead inspector met, and we had keeping touches throughout the week to make sure that the logistics were working well. And it was an inspection that was delivered with a degree of kindness, a degree of respect. Staff were asked how they experienced the interviews. We were asked as a leadership team how we were experiencing it. And it is very much a kind of really positive, strength-based approach taken by HMIP, which was, yeah, really pleasing. So the ratings, scored 12 out of 12, so the maximum possible. First and only is just to stay into this inspection regime, which is fantastically positive. So overall rating of outstanding is made up of the 4 sub-areas of assessment practice, planning practice, our direct delivery with children and people, and our work with victims, which is made up of the organisation arrangements and the direct work. So just to dig into some of the headlines in terms of those areas. So assessment practice helped achieve positive change for children, 100% of cases seems outstanding, 81%. So for keeping the child and the community safe. And some of the headlines from that, which are taken directly from the HMIP report, are around assessing activity for positive change, showed professional curiosity. So practitioners that were asking the right questions at the right time with the right people to try and understand the children's behaviours and needs. To aid that, they were accessing information from a range of different agencies. So we have an education officer, we have access to the children's social care system, we have health practitioners, and it was gathering information from all those practitioners, all of those services that helped us create in-depth holistic assessments for children. Practitioners were seen as creative at involving children and their parents, which helped identify reasons behind children's offending behaviours. And the relational side of the work between our practitioners, children, parents and victims was something that really came out as a strength in the report. There was analysis of personal circumstances of children, including family background, their history of trauma, any adverse childhood experiences, which again was a strength in the vast majority of inspected cases. So they're the strengths in assessment practice. The one area that the inspectors pulled out in terms of something that they thought we could do slightly better was in a small group of cases where a more comprehensive analysis of how to keep children is safer, felt could have been more fully considered and explored. some of the behaviours weren't always analysed in a more cohesive, composite way. So there's a little bit of work for us to do, which I'll come on to when we talk about the recommendations in relation to assessment practice. Thinking of doing around that, what we're going to include in our youth justice plan helps deliver that piece of work. Planning, as the scores show, a real strength of the service. Practitioners consider children's individual concepts. So it really was around children's worlds, digging into information around that children's experiences, what was going on in their lives, the information that we gathered from partner agencies, and really good quality assessment was leading on to really good quality plans, which is something we'd hope to see, but hasn't been experienced by HMIP and other inspections that done in other parts of the country. So seeing assessment not always leading on to good planning practice. As I mentioned, the relational work was really strong. So practitioners were involving children, parents and carers in the planning, working together to develop agreed and shared goals. So children really felt part of those plans, parents felt included, and that helped the direct work and delivery because they were involved in those assessments, involved in the plans and involved in the viewing of them. Sequencing of plans is something we really work hard on. So that's about delivering the right services in the right order and at the right time for children, so they're not overwhelmed. We prioritise the risky stuff first and then some of the more functional stuff afterwards. Practitioners were aware of structural barriers, so times that children function better, we'd make appointments for those times, making sure that we weren't giving appointments at times that families were having time together, making sure that any speech language needs were considered when we're delivering our work. And that was through the in-depth induction our practitioners were doing with staff. So we go through a range of assessment tools to try and understand children, their needs, how they function and learn best, and make sure that when we deliver work, it's based on that assessment and that practice. There are opportunities for children to engage in new activities. So the HMIP, one of the key things they did say in feedback was they haven't seen such a broad range of intervention activities in any service for a huge amount of time. And the inspection report talks about some of those services that are available to children, to enhancing employment skills, mentoring, third sector interventions, knife crime and violence interventions, motoring offences specific programmes. So a really broad range of interventions for children to engage with. And also children had access to other practitioners in the service, such as our campus practitioner, speech and language, clinical psychology, and victim practitioners, which made sure that they had, again, a range of needs reflected in the interventions that were delivered to them. Practitioners took account of children's diversity needs, which I've just mentioned, and that's around the self-assessments and the work we do during induction to get to know children, their needs, and how we best deliver services to them. Planning actively and accurately pinpointed how to achieve safety and stability for the child. So although there are a handful of assessments where we want to improve in terms of that risk assessment, what that didn't impact on were the plans to keep children, victims and communities safe from some of those kind of risky behaviours, whether that was gangs, victimisation, etc. What HMIP saw was really good planning practice around risk. Direct delivery was perhaps the strongest area and something that HMIP scored as that. So this particularly around work to achieve positive change, but also in keeping children and communities safe, 97%. So virtually every case there seems hugely strong. So we built on strengths. We are a strengths-based service. So we're trying to pull out from children the things that are going on in their lives and trying to build intervention plans on them, actively working on strengths. We developed and maintain positive working relationships with children, parents and families. So the respect our practitioners were able to show to families, children, young people and victims were seen as real strengths and something that helped engagement in the services that were on offer. Practitioners promptly identified areas in the way of effective engagement. So earlier I mentioned the right times, the right venues that we deliver work in, all important things that HMIP take into account when assessing the impact of interventions. Practitioners understood the context children were living in, services were delivered within that context. So were we taking practitioners out, away from family homes that were a bit chaotic at times, difficult to deliver some of that direct work. And that was seen as a real strength in terms of making sure that practitioners were really accounting for children's lived context in that delivery. Structural barriers were considered. There were access to lots of learning opportunities for children, and that was in relation to victim work, it was in relation to offending behaviour work, also work to develop their speech and language skills, work to develop education opportunities. And there are a number of cases where the HMIP inspection team saw practitioners challenging schools back on making sure that children had a full and appropriate timetable of work within school, which again is one of those kind of key areas to help offending, risk of reoffending in the future. Work to achieve safety for the child and the community was a real strength. Practitioners were delivering consistently to help achieve safety and stability for children, which in turn helped keep them and communities safe. When we talk about risk, it's risk to children and risk from children, acknowledging some of the so vulnerable and potentially a risk to others. So think about things like exploitation, or a risk of others that are doing that exploitation, but also when they're involved in gang type activity, there's a risk to others within the community. So what the HMIP saw was managers also managing multi-agency risk management and safety panels and forums, which help share information, bring services together around the table and make sure there was a joined up approach to trying to manage that risk for children. In terms of work with victims, this was the only area in the country that so far has been scored outstanding. So we have a commissioned service called Remedy by all of our restorative justice practice. So that includes work with victims, indirect work, so indirect restorative justice practices, etc. So what HMIP saw was a high quality individualised response. So gathering information on victims, making sure they were signposted to services to meet their needs, making sure that if they didn't want direct mediation or direct restorative justice for children, other options such as indirect reparation, letters of explanation or other outcome of delivery was provided for them. HMIP, through the minutes they saw from the Youth Justice Partnership Board, the interviews that were given, the victim focus group, could see that the Partnership Board engagement had really embraced prioritisation and the needs of victims, and that had been supported by having victim champions within the board. So the Police and Crime Commissioner's Office and Remedy, both board members, both champion the views of victims. And we'd also recently taken our victim policy and a really comprehensive report to the board, which outlined numbers, key data around victim and restorative justice practice, and some of the casework Remedy have been doing with victims of crime, which demonstrated the grip the board had around that particular area. HMIP saw there were effective arrangements in place between the police and Remedy for obtaining consent to share victim details, a very personalised approach. Victims were consistently supported making informed choices about the type of restorative work that they wanted. High quality information was also provided by Remedy to the victims so they could expect. And the restorative justice practitioner, Natasha, collected and dynamically used protected characteristics to inform service delivery. So that might have been around additional needs, might have been the need for young people under 18 to be referred to Got You Back, which is a specific victim service for those under the age of 18. Where there are more serious crimes committed and the child receives a custodial sentence of 12 months or more, we liaise with the victim liaison officer and team at the probation service. That was seen to be effective, understood and implemented where needed. And there were enhanced services to victims assessed as vulnerable. And the team at Remedy were accessing a range of different training, development and opportunities to make sure they have the skills to develop and deliver good quality victim work. So the 2 bullet points in the maroon you can see are around the kind of areas that HMIP wanted to develop or to maintain, and the bottom point is around maintaining operational practice of a high quality, including reviewing the quality of recording within the victim contact record and making sure we continue to embed high quality recording practice, which they did see during that inspection. It's about making sure we don't lose that grip. And then the other improvement or development area was around Derbyshire Police needing to improve the quality of protected characteristics information. So this was in relation to more detailed personal characteristics, which aren't shared automatically at the point of consent and the point of victim information share. This is quite a tricky task for the service to deliver on its own because it's police and Remedy. And there's a bit of a challenge at the moment with Derbyshire Police sharing that information. So it's been escalated to the Youth Justice Board and to HMIP because it's becoming a bit of a national issue and something that we might need a better resolution of nationally rather than locally. So the recommendations, the 3 key recommendations there, I've just spoke through them. In terms of the quality of analysis in assessing activity to keep children and communities safe, we have included in our some work with the Workforce Learning and Development team to train all frontline practitioners in good quality assessment, share best practice, and we're going to do some quality assurance work. So we're going to increase our quality assurance work around direct QA, less on compliance, quantitative performance, which we've got really clear grip on, increase our audits 3 a year, really focusing on assessment and particularly assessment of risk. Remedy are undertaking work to make sure that they're dip sampling and auditing their work around victim practice. And then the last point I've kind of just spoke about, and that's around the piece characteristics information, which I think we're going to need a resolution at a higher level from national plan. The final words from the Chief Inspector, Martin Russell. The Youth Justice Partnership can rightly celebrate with pride, not just the outcome of the inspection, but the lasting changes achieved to effect to thrive, keeping them. So the full inspection report is about presentation. So happy to take any sorts of questions.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions or anything they'd like to raise?
Yeah.
Councillor?
I mean, this is an incredible achievement, and I think a huge congratulations to all members of the team for bringing this about. Certainly being the first in the country to achieve this is literally outstanding. The problem with outstanding is you can never go further up. You either stay the same or you come down. The problem with 12 out of 12 is you literally can't go further up. It's I don't ever want to just focus on the negatives. It's delightful to see that we're already putting in place those plans to maintain at that top level. Are there any particular challenges we see coming up over the course of the next year, either from experiences in this year or from changes that we foresee that we're already working at the minute to start tackling in the coming year?
Some of the challenges, there's some things we mentioned in the Youth Justice Plan around the cost of living. There's still a risk around exploitation, still a risk around high risk offences. So recently, which we're dealing with at the moment, and these things can always trigger a bit of a chain reaction in the community. So it is an ongoing challenge to maintain that level of performance. In terms of the inspection recommendations, the key challenge there is the protected characteristic work, which is it needs a national approach really to develop.
And I think what I would say is that what you've got laid out is a very robust, mature, sophisticated service that can and will respond to any unknowns. We've been working with unknowns all the time. We can't see, we can't predict police activity or human behaviours, but the service is absolutely in the best place possible to be able to respond to any of those issues that arise, and I'm confident that they will be able to.
Just come back in one more time, just on the I think we're right in terms of that national change that's needed, certainly on that third point. What sort of position are we in at the minute in lobbying government to make those changes? Is it something we've already started doing, or is it something we've got plans for going forwards?
The Youth Justice Board will do the lobbying, so it's been escalated to, we have a regional oversight manager, Tracy, who's escalated that within the Youth Justice Board national team, so that will then go up. It's also been escalated through to the HMIP, so the deputy lead nationally, Mike, he's been made aware of this kind of challenge. So again, the lobbying will come through HMIP as an inspection group and through the Youth Justice Board. So it's already at that level. So we've escalated it up as much as we can do at the moment.
That's it. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah,
I have a question regarding the inspections. There's lots of reference to the inspector speaking to staff. I just wondered whether the young people that had actually been through the Youth Justice Service were involved in the inspection.
There were.
Cases being observed.
Yeah, there were. We were invited to speak to a number of young people. So our caseworkers went out to speak to young people to see if they wanted to be involved in the inspection regime. A number did come back and say yes. So a number of their parents also came back and said yes. So we spoke to them about their preferred communication style. How did they want the inspection team to speak to them? A lot chose either a phone call or text. So there was a lead inspector on participation. So they would speak to the young people, speak to parents and carers. And the feedback's in the main report, and you can see some of the kind of comments young people gave, parents gave. It was really effusive in terms of its praise, its quality. So yeah, young people were involved in that. Yeah, good question.
Councillor Rice?
Yes, yes, congratulations on this report, which highlights trailblazing areas for the whole service, really. Is it implicit in the overall outstanding performance that resourcing is not a problem for the service?
What they will look at is whether the resources are available to provide high quality services to children and young people. So through the lens of that direct work, through the board minutes, really check of the staffing structure, and we're looking at whether all those resources are in place to be able to deliver a high quality service. So there'll be some services in the country where there'll be seconded officers in place. So some services would have a seconded probation officer or a CAMS officer, and that is a clear gap in terms of that delivery. Where we've had gaps, we've used some of our underspends and monies to provide services. So we noted a gap around Pakistani male and mentoring. So we delivered some mentoring, we commissioned that as a bespoke service. So we've been very creative also in service in terms of developing some of those programs, free charge or low cost, borrowing resources from other areas or other agencies. Our motoring program is from Gwent, so we developed that with the police. We had a volunteer to do some of that work. So it's not all about the cost, it's about the creativity within the service and the, just gelling some of those ideas together.
Okay, so resources not a problem.
I'd also coming around the statutory nature of the multi-agency partnership. It's not just the local authority. This is a requirement for police, health, and health, etc., to be adding resources in. And the purpose of the board is to ensure that those requirements are upheld, and partners do. Partners are incredibly,
they're incredibly supportive in terms of the finance as well. We've Police and Crime Commissioner's Office have given us youth crime prevention. There's a new programme called Young Futures Prevention Partnerships, which we started with the Police and Crime Commissioner, managed to get some money from central government. Community Safety Partnership, I put some money in for some of our resources for mentoring. Public Health did last year because they had a strategic aim around county lines and exploitation. So as Suan says, the partnership is crucial to making sure that the resources in finance, seconded staff, the challenge and support is all there to kind of create what we've been able to create in Derby, which is a really holistic change response to youth crime challenges.
Quite impressive. Thank you.
Councillor Lonsdale?
That's okay. Obviously you had the Stop the Church where the young people were challenging police. What sort of feedback from the police about the behaviour change? Has there been behaviour change from the police for that?
Yes, one of the key things is that we are now involved in the training of police officers around stop and search practice. So some of the things young people were saying around, I felt I was treated differently to somebody, one of my friends who was a different gender or a different colour of skin. We took that back to the police, and we've been involved in training at police headquarters for new officers, new recruits around stop and search practice, making sure the use of body worn footage is appropriate, making sure that officers turning their body worn cameras on. Also around acronyms about young people knowing their rights. The police have given them some information on, so there's an acronym that we use. The police have provided to young people so that they know their rights when they're stopped and searched, so that they can ask certain things of officers to make sure that that stop and search is conducted in line with the legislation the police use for stop and search practice. So there has been a genuine buy-in to police on that.
That's good. Actually, this is my third question. Sorry. With the police, is there any work being done to restore relationship with these young people? Obviously, the relationship can break down with a young person who's been involved in these areas of the world with the police, and actually we want them to know that they can trust the police to go to them if they're suffering.
Well, that's part of the work.
Yeah.
And particularly as a number of those children are children from low majority backgrounds, and trust in certain communities with the police is lower because there's a feeling of over-policed, under-supported and under-protected. So a number of those children are from those backgrounds, and that's kind of helping develop that relationship with police officers, Rebecca and Dan. We also do police perceptions work. So our seconded police officers, we've got 2 make up 1 full-time equivalent, so 2 part-time officers. They will do perceptions work with police as well around police are able to engage with them. Police, I think, have been quite progressive in their prevention work with us. So trying to divert is one of the kind of key strategic aims for Derbyshire Police, both adults and children, because the system can't cope with those numbers, and actually going to court, going to prison doesn't work. There's years of evidence to show us how that just increases risk of reoffending. So they're really on board in terms of using diversion prevention outcomes, because our data shows how impactful and important that is. So the police are really on board with those clinics, trying to engage families at an earlier point. So yeah, there's a genuine partnership and genuine buy-in by the police randomly held around trying to make sure that relationships with local communities are improved.
Brilliant. Finally, it's mainly a comment more than a question, I guess. It's fantastic. You've done so well. I think we're all really so happy and proud, and it's great to hear. Done so well because of your innovation. How are you keeping the innovation going? Because we can't just sit on our laurels. You need to do really well. So that needs to be enshrined in how you're working forward. And where are you looking next for the next innovation?
Well, we went through the Youth Justice Plan a few weeks ago, as you know,
Yeah.
So that kind of sets out what we're planning over the next 12 months in terms of our work with children and young people. So making sure that first of all, we meet the recommendation requirements, so make sure that assessment practice is on point for every case that we work with. And a piece of work we've looked at recently is restarting our schools work, particularly with certain groups in the community. So we've just done a Pakistani boys group. So we brought a group of our young people together with a trusted partner, Al Haraya, to try and hear about their experiences in the community, what was working for them, what wasn't, what was working for their families and what wasn't. And we're doing a piece of work with schools, Safe and Sound and Al Haraya, to deliver some mentoring and in-school support at Penrose and Derby Moor after Christmas, particularly with Roma, Pakistani boys. So that's our kind of next innovation. But sustaining that level of work will also be a huge resource burden, as well as trying to incrementally put some as well. And we're going to some junior schools as well after Christmas to make sure we've got that early help, linking in with Mini Police, Safe and Sound, and Round Midnight, different groups that deliver services in schools as part of an all-round prevention agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would obviously want to echo everybody else's congratulations. What a resounding success you've had, and really encouraging to hear this report. We can only guess at the enormous work you had to do prior to the inspection to supply all that paperwork, which sounds like an absolute nightmare, really. I just wondered how often you would expect to have this type of inspection, and whether there's a way of having that paperwork kind of rolling so that you're not so inundated with work for the next one, really.
Our last inspection was 2018, and we were the first service in the country in that regime to be inspected. So it's been quite a while, 7 years, and that was impacted by COVID. So ordinary services wouldn't have to wait that long for a full inspection. It would usually be every 3 to 4 years a cycle. So in terms of that work, there are new things that HMIP asked for as that evidence in advance. So getting a stop and search showcase panel, the self-evaluation forms, stuff. Yeah, they weren't there last time. So some of it's stuff that we have continued. So the board minutes, we have a board every quarter. The minutes come out, they're really robust. We're really on time with our youth justice plan. So some things do continue. Some of the things we can't predict because HMIP always like to update in every regime the range of things they want to kind of do, bring in, ask services for. But the positive thing I would say is that I had a feedback session with the head of the HMIP nationally weeks ago, and they surveyed me on my experiences to service. And I was able to feed back areas where I thought there was quite a burden on the service. So 3 weeks of really all managers on this work and really just keeping the operations ticking over. There's a huge amount of work really on the service and a huge amount of pressure.
And we also had 8 inspectors that came in for the service, which was actually more than the whole of the children's ILACs inspection team. It was a huge amount of inspectors to actually accommodate for the service. So that, I think that was fed back as well, wasn't it?
That's fed back, yeah. Yeah, along with some of the impact on some of the practitioners as well, because the victim work had 15 cases. I said one work 15 cases is not fair. It's not proportionate. So, I mean, Natasha didn't complain, but, for future learning for HMIP, they took it on board, they listened. So
they've been rigorously assessed.
Absolutely.
No stone was left unturned. And I think, in terms of, I think I sent the report out following the last scrutiny board, as soon as it was published, this is something I think I'm really pleased to hear that members are proud. And it's for you to use yourselves with your constituency. Is, high profile of anxiety within Derby at the moment. And I think this goes some way to maybe, alleviating some, or providing some confidence. So to use this report yourselves with your constituency. General public.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. And that's on our thanks to your team.
Thank you, Chair. After looking at this, it's actually hard to know what to say. So I'm just going to make a comment or something. When we're looking at the recommendations, my eyes jumped at number 3, which is the collection of protected characteristics information. And then I was thinking about the protected characteristics. I, for instance, would fall into 2 of them, but it does not mean I agree with the legal definition of those protected characteristics. And I've noticed as time's gone on, so this is a relatively recent phenomenon, inside each of these pools of protected characteristics, it's increasingly clear that there is no consensus within those groups on what that actually is. And it seems, I'm noticing arguments breaking out. How could you actually collect the data when there's no consensus within those groups on the definition of what that actually is? Yes. It's a,
I'm just thinking that needs to start to
yes. I'll give a very good example. I'm a gay man, and I often feel like I'm being defined by people who aren't. My definition of what that is might not be somebody else's. I don't know how you resolve that one.
Well, I'm a black woman. I'm a black female, and my sex and my race is defined within the Equality Act 2010.
No, I fully get that, but I've had people talk to me as though what I should be thinking, when I'm actually thinking the complete opposite, just because of that, as the way it's defined in law. So does the data around, it's not going to be all of them, that is true. Is it useful for actually using for that purpose or not?
I think it's about trying to make sure that it's an opportunity to listen to people, isn't it? It's an opportunity to kind of find out about people's background and make sure that the services are developed around how people, there are definitions and there are legal kind of things we need to do, required to do, but also within that, it's about how that everybody's experience within one of those protected characteristics is different and unique to them, isn't it? So it's about how we understand that unique perspective to deliver the right service at the right time. So it's how you might define yourself and how you want the service to be delivered, that's an opportunity for that to come out, because you're right, you can't just stereotype and say because that person's got that protected characteristic, we'll do this like that.
Yeah.
And that's what our induction work's around, is around trying to understand, by doing induction work with victims and with young people, to understand about their lives and how we best deliver that.
Across all of children's services, councillor, there is an element of self presentation, and we will accept that if that is how a child wants to present themselves, then we will accept that, and then take that forward in the assessment.
Yeah, thank you.
Chair, can I just come back with that? Because I suppose that there are two elements. There's a subjective element and there's the objective. I should imagine that part of the evidence gathering, as was said, that you were asked to provide evidence with respect to certain variables, such as, well, I don't know if it was socioeconomic, social class, ethnicity, sex. You were asked. So the fact that you were asked to actually give information with respect to these objective structural definition suggests that it's not all, but I see what you mean in terms of this delivering the service to the individuals, that of course one needs to recognise how people see themselves, describe themselves, understand themselves. So that's one level, but there's also a more objective element that we have to take into consideration.
Fabulous. Any other comments from anybody yet? Councillor Buck?
It's more of a comment than a question. As I mentioned to, I think it was Andrew, we had a school forum at Noel Baker School a fortnight ago, and as a follow-up to that, some of the students, that one of the key concerns raised was feeling unsafe in the city centre with specific worries about knife crime and gang-related violence. As a result of that, my neighbourhood manager has been working very hard, and she's trying to, I've not heard of this particular company, a company called Salt Mine, that come to the school and they do a performance called Switch Up. It explores complex and interconnected issues of knife crime, gangs and youth violence, followed by an interactive workshop. And we're just sorting this out through the neighbourhood board and everything, and this is hopefully going to take place next year at Noel Baker School. Obviously, as we get a bit nearer, I can let you know, should you wish to be involved or see what's happening a little more. I'm sure you know Stephanie Holt. She's the lady setting this up for us. And I think that'll be a very worthwhile exercise for these people to come across and put on like a production to show things about knife crime and gang violence. I've not heard of it myself, and you possibly got Salt Mine, but obviously I'll be looking into it. I've only received this email from Stephanie today, and she seems very keen to set this up, so I'll keep you informed as to what happens with that.
Yeah. You've got any other comments now? So yeah, thank you everybody. Thanks for the presentation, Andrew. I've got nothing too big to add, but I would just like to put just a small recommendation, just saying that this board would like to thank all of those involved in securing that outstanding inspection outcome, for all of the work that they've done, and that the committee offers its support to achieve the same result at the next inspection. That's right. You've got something to second at all? Yeah, Catherine. Thank you. Fabulous. Right then, we shall move on to our next item. That is the Derby Promise. So just as a quick overview for that, so the aim of Derby Promise is to provide a bridge for residents into the economic growth and development opportunities that are within Derby, to raise kind of aspirations and give a route map to the skills and employment opportunities for residents, so that they can be economically active and to increase their economic prosperity. Can't speak today. Prosperity, We've got Sharon with us just to present the report, so I'll pass over to you, Sharon, if that's okay.
Thank you very much. So Derby Promise, a really good introduction. Derby Promise was a manifesto commitment sold along the Lake Route and as the champion of the council, but also sits within the city partnership. So I think it's really important to establish that. And the reason why it sits within the City Partnership Board is because Derby Promise will never work unless we can really galvanise employers within the city. And as the City Partnership Board has anchor organisations on the different components, it's really important. And I can't state enough just how supportive I am to trying to make a difference and make an impact on children. Where do we start? We start from the context of the tale of three cities. And Derby is a tale of two cities. We have some amazing achievements in the city. We've got 600 apprentices at Rolls-Royce Nuclear. They're not all Derby city residents, but half are from Derbyshire and Derby City. And given the fact that these are young people on a level 6 and is apprenticeship program, it's really an outstanding achievement to have that amount of young people working towards will be the future leaders of our nuclear and advanced technology. We've been really successful at the Key Stage 5 as well, with successes including students at Littleover who won gold medals at the Chemistry Olympiads. And we had young people at Landau Forte going across to Iowa, sorry. It's the I's in American expense. Iowa, because they'd successfully got through to the final round in a competition for robotics. So amazing successes. That then flips to the other side of the coin. We have significant rates of child poverty. And we know there's significant evidence to demonstrate the impact of deprivation on outcomes. And there's been a particular focus and piece of work by the DFE over the last 12 months on white British working class, not just boys, but girls too. And some of the stark details coming out and data on that is we can't understate, given the fact also that Derby City has 85% of its residents are white British. Absolutely. And if we look then at our significant wards where there are high rates of deprivation, it mirrors the findings of the DFE. So with that, we have and have been, since the pandemic, we achieve 4 percentage points every year behind our stat neighbours and nationally on GCSE outcomes, but also at Key Stage 2 and at GLD, so good level of demand perception. So it's a story that starts, and we know if you do not get a good start in life with regards to education, and your readiness for school is not there, you're unable to read, your life is in front of a screen, in essence, the likelihood of you performing. So much so that by the age of 5, if you're from a deprived community or a family with significant levels of deprivation, and mainly talking about those on free school meals, you are likely to be 5 months behind your counterparts at the age of 5. At the age of 11, that stretches to 10 months behind. At the age of 16, that stretches to 19 months behind. And if you're a child in the north, that's 22 months behind. Okay? That's not to do with SEND. That's to do with not having reading every day in your home, not having the opportunities to experience different things, attending school. By year 8, those in deprived communities, year 9, those in deprived communities attend only 30%. 30% only attend every day in school if you're from a deprived background. Say that again, because I tripped up my words now. So in year 9, if you're on free school meals, there is a likelihood you are only going to attend every day. 30% of people are only going to attend every day. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's
Like last one.
Yeah. In year 8, when the DfE asked young people what they felt about the relevance of school, only 11% from deprived communities stated that there was any relevance to their future. And for parents, it was 36%. So the story, your life chances are set very early. Your brain development as a 4-year-old is probably going to be the most, between 0 and 4 is the most you're ever going to have. Your capacity to learn, your ability, your understanding of learning, etc., etc. So when we think about Derby, we have to be honestly thinking about these things in the context of why our outcomes aren't as good as they are. 8 years of investment by the DfE has made no difference. What worries me even more is that our early years outcomes, which is good level development at reception age, this year was 64%. The target been set by the DfE is that by 2028, all children at the age of 4, 4.5, 5 should be achieving 76% of the level example. There's a 12% gap before we start trying to now. That's not to say that people aren't aspirational for their young people. They are children. Absolutely. The school doesn't seem the way for doing it. So when we come to the age of 16, I've added this in here because it wasn't in the original. And we look at the numbers of youngsters who are not engaged in education, employment and training in Derby. We look at the point in January every year because that's when we have to give our national returns. And then we check at the end of the academic year too. So January 2025, there was 7.9% of 16 to 15-year-olds not engaged in education, employment and training. That was 3 percentage points higher than the previous year. So we doubled the number. When you drop it, when you drill down, it's even more when you've got special educational need, and at 26.5% of all those with special education post 16. I wanted to give you the wards with the highest level of needs in the city. In January and in July, 2 points when we check.
In your mind is what needs them.
Not engaged in education, training, colleges,
Yeah.
So the highest wards, as you can see, are Alston North, Chad West, Sinfin and Osmaston, Chad North, Normanton, and then Alston South, Abbey. Okay. So your ward councillors, you will know this very well. I'm only telling you what you already know, so apologies for that. But it's a really important point because when you track back on attainment levels are the same, so you are less likely to get good level of development, key stage 2 outcome, a GCSE, if you live in those wards, irrespective of the school that you go to.
Has Arboretum been conflated as a internet?
No, Arboretum was a separate one, but it didn't. I think that was 8%. I drew a line at 8%.
Well, yeah, that's because it's a multiracial
environment,
and the aspiration for education is Asian and Black, irrespective of where they live.
That's very true.
Would it be possible to get a ward by ward breakdown for the whole city?
Yeah, I can send it to you. No problem. So that's the reason why we did the Derby Promise. So going back to how we're doing and what we're doing, why we're doing. We know the why. Now I'm going to go on to the what. We've got a roundtable that's been established that includes membership of our local area inclusion partnership board. So all the key leaders of schools, those that lead the chair the secondary, the primary, the early year strategy groups, the universities in there, as well as the FE college. We have also the YMCA in there too. We've also got our anchor organisations from the City Partnership Board on the roundtable. We have local authority representatives. We have the theatre, Culture Derby, but more importantly, your people are here. And the aims and aspirations of what we're trying to do is rooted completely in what young people have said. And as you can see here, as well, Sam, previous video, who every time we have a Derby Promise meeting, they will come in and challenge everybody around the table. So they're the voice of our young people who were at that meeting to say what young people are feeling, what the aspirations of young people are, and where they're going. We've just done an aspirations survey across all schools for young people to come to basically identify what their aspirations are. And the our young SEND ambassadors and young people's forums will look at that detail and identify what the recommendations therefore should be. What they've also told us is that whilst they're really grateful for employers to do one-off visits, CVs, interviews, doesn't really make a difference to their understanding about what work is about and how they could possibly get through it. So there's what they're asking for is much more commitment, a longer term commitment, a different way. They ask for a different way of doing the curriculum. Can you make the curriculum more relevant to students? Can you make the curriculum, we don't understand how we're going to get there from what we've got. Can you be more involved in doing it? Now, several secondary schools also and primary have asked for this. Please, employers, can you come and work with us on the curriculum? The challenge that we have there is that DFE set Skills England set the curriculum and Ofsted measure it against those things. So one of the things that we're hoping to do going forward is, and I started that conversation with Skills England and with the DFE, can Derby do something? See if we can make a difference, because our employers want it, schools want it, parents want it, children want it. So this is the logic model. We've got this level of underachievement. We've got the Derby Promise. The Derby Promise is about bringing together all the organisations in the city, East Midlands Combined Authority with regards to the inclusive growth strategy, the inclusive growth commission, Get Britain Working. We've got our learning and skills and employment ecosystem. That's where essentially all the providers come together with developing a whole range of different areas. And then we're looking at our employers for industrial growth. And the idea is that what we've developed is a youth ambition, and an employers and skills opportunity escalator. We're starting to develop it. And that's basically how do you get to there? Where can you get on? Where can you get off? Where can you access a unit in training? Where can you access something that will help you to get to the next level of your career without having to do a full year in a college or a full year in university or a full year somewhere, but you can do it bite-sized as well as in a different way. The idea being that if we get this right, we'll have improved outcomes. So as I said, your youth ambition, build aspiration from an early age, meaningful work placements. That's not, I'm going to your mum and dad's family work placement. This is meaningful placements. Engage employers through innovative sector-led careers, curriculum design. Why can't we have Derby County going into schools to talk about stats? Because to performance is always based on statistics. They don't run anything without having stats. It's just basic things like that. If you can weld, you can do maths. I don't care what anybody says, because you need to be able to do a whole I mean, you can do chemistry as well, but you need to do a whole combination of various things. So how do we make it a bit more relevant? And having a single point of recruitment, break down the usual traits of you need to do psychometric testing or other forms of occupation. How do we do recruitment differently? How are we more neurodiverse sensitive? How are we more sensitive to thinking that if you're from a certain environment where you've got no role models, you can't see it because you can't, you can't be it because you can't see it, then your ability to walk over threshold is really challenging. So well, how do we do things differently? So we're working with everybody to try and work this through. And with that, we want to inject a bit of fun in this as well, so it's not all serious. So we've done a few things over the last 12 months when we launched in May 2020. We ran with the development of Valent Live, we ran a design competition that 6 schools were engaged in, and they were able to contribute to what the final product looked like, the winner was. And we want to do that for every single regeneration initiative in the city. We've run our second now, first in summer and then 24 and then summer 25, with the Derbyshire Institute of Sport and all the sports and leisure sectors to do a careers event. What we try and do is combine careers events with something fun. So come and have a week's fun activity, but also we will bore you to death about careers in sport and events and leisure sector. And over in 2024, we had 1,000 engagements over the week across that. In November 2024 and then March 25, we ran a climate change in STEM Festival of Ideas. And that was every child, whether you were at St Clair's or whether you were at Anastrew Woodlands, secondary were invited to the careers event. It also then followed up by Science Week and a whole series of activities. And we built in there debates on climate change. So there was tests, different chemistry type tests that you could do to look at climate change and STEM issues, which we then showcased in Science Week. And in primary school, we did the same. So we held an event here, and it was all about what was their vision of climate change? Where did they think the future was for Derby? And at the same time, we ran a whole series of activities with schools to make sure they had their climate change or their net zero policies. So a significant amount. This year, we're holding a full week just in March, as you say. But it's really, really innovative. Following on from that, we've taken out into every single secondary school something called Development Experts, which is an AI-generated careers information, advice and guidance tool that young people can access to see what their career pathway would be, as well as for curriculum leaders to look at how they can be supported to develop an industry-led curriculum. And Developing Experts is backed by nuclear skills, GPR, all the major manufacturing programs around business. And then we have the Cream Fest in summer this year. We had a schools takeover day where hopefully there was some background work into this over a period of 3 months. The Royal Shakespeare Company went into early year settings, primary and secondary, to do some work on the Midsummer Night's Dream. So the focus was on literacy and oracy, and at the same time, performance. And those young people performed. And we had careers days, and over a 2-day, there were 4,000 engagements. 300 young people from schools on Friday, but 4,000 family different types of engagements with family members around careers, around cultures, and trying things out. This year we've got theatre, musical theatre, producers from London are coming up to do some work with our young people on performance. We're using one book, I think it's going to be Matilda. So it will be about how young people, it is about reading, it's about literacy, it's about oracy, but it's also about careers in the creative and cultural sector. And in November, we've got a whole cultural and creative sector skills event happening. I'm not sure whether you had a chance to look, but there's a link there to the video from that particular event. Going on to the next slide. Where we're next, I mentioned the aspiration survey. We're tracking outcomes and progression from those that were engaged in the activities. We've got a Derby Prize portal that's recommissioning and recruitment in 2 separate sections. We've got the Derby Dozen, where we've got younger than me Derby residents who are there saying they went to Baker, they went to Coda. This is what they're doing now. So it is about seeing what, believing what you can see. We're working with AMCA, an local organisation, to really think about curriculum. We've got a new post-16 learning and skills forum and a map. We'll go out to, what we're trying to do is like a train map, design things that are easy for people to understand. We're holding various sector skills events, Send Careers evenings, we've got those planned. And we're thinking about in the summer to do a world skills event. And that's where young people get into competition. So they're supported during the year with by employers, and then get into competitions about who's the best welder, who can be the best chemistry person. Dream Fest 2, and as next year is the National Year of Reading, we will be having one book, and one book will be taken across every primary school, every secondary school, and it's supported by Bookfest and the university, and we are looking, and every anchor organisation is looking to do a video of them, senior leaders and members of the workforce reading to their children. So it becomes a thing. Employer, we've got a series of activities in our skills and employment pathways. We've done lots of employer engagement, now working on account management basis. We've held a number of jobs and apprenticeship fairs, and we are really pleased that we've got now in Derby Construction Skills Technical College. It's just been allocated, and that's through Derby College. And Friarsgate Studios is our post-16 sensitive centre. And we're looking at external funding. So far, we've secured £1 million from AMCA to deliver, and from the DFE to deliver some of this work. And we've got that rolled over for another year, and we're going out for even more funding to increase that, so we can do more work in wards and at community level. So there's some examples of the work that's been taken over, undersold us in terms of the work that we've been doing from 2025. We've got 75 engaged, not 25. So that's a mistype from me, and I'll make sure, Chair, that you get the right paper. So we've held 2 job fairs, 730 attended, 38 employers brought to the table 480 vacant posts. Those people that attended either went into those posts or went on to courses. So it was run by Derby Adult Learning Services. The Employment Skills team is part of the Derby Adult Learning Service. So if you aren't in that position at the moment where you can get into work, we will find you a programme to go on to. So our programme for next year is to continue to grow our interwork programmes, collaborate with the University of Derby, Derby College and anchor organisations to launch a new opportunity estimator for Derby for a route map into careers and employment. Explore other opportunities for industrial learning centres of excellence and expand the links through into schools. So our UTC, our University Technical College, is brilliant. It's only has an annual intake of 100 per year, 120 per year. At its open day last weekend, there were 800 young people at 792, I think. Young people turned up to try and get into 120 places. So we need to do something about expanding it. And we're looking at delivering an employers summit in the spring term to ask employers to pledge what their commitment is to the opportunity escalator and to making this a reality for all young people and all residents. We've got to do better communications because we do a lot of doing and not talking. Circulated the time thing that we've on at the moment. That will fill up even more, and we're talking with Derby County Football Club to hold special careers events on Saturday afternoon during football time. So that's what we're doing in terms of job response. Questions or thoughts?
Fabulous. Yes, Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Jan. Comprehensive presentation. Lots of questions. The first one is, could you just say a little bit more about what you mean by the curriculum being made more relevant? Are we talking here about content, or are we talking about methods of delivery? And I'll tell you why I made that distinction. At some point, we don't want to talk about core educative skills can be delivered or are reflected in areas of employment such as in football as an area because it involves numeracy, strategy, welding. It's a pity that in many of our universities curriculum areas such as chemistry, physics, biology, they're all declining. So I'm just a bit concerned about this narrative in relation to curriculum and making it more relevant, because I can't imagine for one moment that children, young people going to schools such as Little Over, Ecclesbourne, schools that are in predominantly middle class areas, fee-paying schools, I can't imagine that they would be or unhappy about the fact that the curriculum, the national curriculum, is about ensuring that children develop basic transferable skills such as being able to read, write, convey their thoughts, etc. So if you could say a little bit more about that, that'd be helpful. And finally, we shouldn't forget that we're in a context where there is increasing unemployment, particularly youth unemployment. And I know there has been an increase in graduates being unemployed. So in the climate where we are seeing increasing unemployment, this very, very good initiative of how we support young people entering the jobs market. What are some of the problems as you see it?
Okay, so there's a number of questions there. Hopefully, Councillor Wright, I'll respond, but if I don't, please don't.
Don't worry. Anything?
So curriculum relevance, it's content and methods delivery. So I look at one of our schools, Alistair Woodland, High Achieving School is one of the few schools that deliver a junior apprenticeship programme run by Rolls-Royce.
Okay.
Other schools aren't able to deliver that.
Okay.
So we need to think about both content and the method of delivery. So method of delivery in A levels, as you will know, you can do an EQP. No, enhanced qualification. Yeah, enhanced qualification, QP, which is equivalent to an A level. There's no reason why, and in fact, back in the day, in the early noughties, we had something called the 14 to 19 diplomas, where different ways of working through a project-based approach, you can deliver maths, science, actually anything. You can deliver philosophy through a project-based approach. I used to teach sociology from a complete ethnographic way of delivery at A level. So you can do that. But if you've got a really constrained curriculum and you've got an Ofsted inspector that only expects you to do things in a certain way, then being able to do things differently is far too constrained for. And if you look at some of the some really high achieving schools around the country, this is your point. I made a point about Alistair, but also elsewhere in the country with a significant number of middle class students, they deliver on a project based methodology, because they're very often taken from a Norwegian way of delivering. So you can do it. There's no reason why you can't do it. And rather than sending a young person to an alternative provision for half the week, surely it would be better if they had a form of a project-based curriculum, some part of their week, where they can go and think through about what a multi-trade program might look like and grow into that. So make the changes afterwards, but at least they then see the relevance of different things. So it is more than feasible to do it.
Increasing youth unemployment.
Yeah, so that's one of our really one of the real problems that we have is that they're disengaged by year 8. And they're disengaged from a curriculum that doesn't mean anything to them, where their parents don't see any regard for it. If you don't see any point in getting GCSEs or your children having a GCSE, then you aren't going to see the relevance of your children being able to do that to get into work. Unfortunately, all work now requires maths and English. It's a key criteria. Not saying it's not rightly so, but if you're disengaged from such an early age, your ability to get work is going to be reduced, which is why we've got such a high rate of youth unemployment in Derby. We've got 330 16 to 25 in the city. That's a phenomenal high number of young people. So yes, I think it won't be for everybody. It should be for everybody. It shouldn't be the whole curriculum. It should only be part. The ways in which we can really be innovative about doing beyond quite that.
I do, just to like pretend a bit there, but I do really agree with that and the kind of routes to go down in similar, but kind of just along the same lines. The different ways of working is really needed. So I had it myself. I was on track completely for A levels, hit A levels when, oh my God, I can't do all these exam based things. Ended up going the practical route at college instead. Then still went to uni, but there were several unis that did my veterinary nursing course, but some of them were heavy exam based and some of them were practical based. And it was kind of that assessing, actually, I'm more practical. I'm going to go down this practical route where there was different variations of presentations, some exams still, but that I found that suited me. And I think that's a big area that should be pushed. I think a lot of kids are very forced down a certain route, and actually opening up that, no, we can teach you this in this way rather than this way will really help. So I think that's really, really important to.
Absolutely. How we sell it. We've got health and so the UTC, the University Technical College, is also not only an engineering pathway, it's got health and social care pathway. But with the university, they're now they're redefining it as a pre-medical programme. so that you don't only think about yourself going into health and social care, but you also think about yourself going into paramedic science or medical route. And so there's some great things going on, but it's only available to a few. Yeah, what we need to be able to do is expand.
Councillor Lonsdale next.
So I'm another example of vocational works. I love my GCSE, exam-based, and coursework based. I just couldn't do them. I went and did a vocational qualification in a museum and have progressed to the point that we've all progressed to. So it works, and doing it differently. I do believe that education has narrowed somewhat in the last year, and everybody is funneled into this, do it this way and that's it. And that is not healthy because we're not all the same. We all have different gifts, and all those young people need middle class, who aren't need, all those, whatever demographic they're in. They are all just, they have so much adrenaline. I would like to make a suggestion, actually, Council Chair, if it's possible. It might not be useful, but would it be possible for us as a board to write a letter of support to take to the round table? Yeah, the round table, and that way, because I can't imagine that anybody doesn't support us doing it differently in Derby, because we are specialists. Yeah.
To the DFE and the Skills England conversation, absolutely, Councillor.
I'm happy for that. Can make a note of that and can look at that afterwards. Yeah, thank you. Fabulous. We have Councillor Ashby next. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Sharon, for the report. I have to admit, when I read it through previously, I was a bit concerned about the approach of education being business led, and led by industry led, I should say, that's the term. So I was very pleased when you said in the report that the desire for it to be industry led had come from parents and children in schools. And I get that makes sense, but I am also concerned because education is so much broader. Yes. But equally, I am, I'm an Abbey Ward councillor. I'm highly aware and highly concerned about the level of unemployment and youth unemployment. So I suppose my big concern, because there's loads of great stuff you've shared, but a lot of it is in the secondary school and rightly, looking at presenting the school leavers and the preschool leavers with inspiration really for employment, which is great. How do we get to the parents of the young children that aren't even going to playgroup and nursery, and how are we going to get in there and start the change that we desperately need in Abbey Ward? Arboretum and Normanton have got all this great money from MCA. What about Abbey Ward? We've got just as much deprivation and need, and a very particular cohort, different cohort of deprivation and need. But how do we change? Because it's about changing mindsets. And some of that is, a lot of that is cultural. In Ireland, there's much higher educational aspiration, but there's higher educational aspiration. You only get the achievement because the aspiration is there.
In Scotland.
We could, we won't go into history lessons and that, but but not today. But how do we change? That 38% of deprivation in Derby and the lack of that inspiration. And
food on the table, folks. Need food on the table.
But it's also a change. It's years and years ago, and Andrew has left. I remember listening to a probation officer speak on something entirely different, not to do with probation. But one of the things he said he learned from his probation days is if you change things by 1% with a young person, then where they land up at the end, if you change by 1% here, it's in a radically different place. How do we make that 1% change?
So we are trying. We'll be working more in localities to see how we can work as with councillors and to engage with residents to do that. The provision is there in Derby. We just need, and our take-up rate actually for Agent 2 isn't bad, but it's 75%. That's still 25% that don't attend.
Yeah.
So there's health visitors.
That's what I was going to say. The plans
health side of things to make sure that attendance is there. But also the importance of, okay, if you don't want your children to go and you want to spend your time with the child, there's nothing, the child, how can we support them in developing their local community, making sure that they are able to use the toilets, etc., etc. So the family hubs are really, really important in this dynamic. So yes, it's an ongoing thing. But also we're looking at, can you believe, joining Dolly Parton's reading scheme, so that every child is given a book every month at the age of 4. So but we also have to recognise that some parents are unable to read. Absolutely. And how do we then support them to not feel undermined? And that's really important. The stigma attached to that is.
You spoke about the funding from MCA, the £1 million, but is there any way to target that funding to the relevant wards and to the preschool?
So no, because it's 16 plus that you can only use that for, and 18 plus for 17 plus from MCA. So we do that. What we're looking at is, to be honest with you, all of these activities have not been funded by MCA. These have been funded by employers. And so, and we're doing some targeted work with the early years sector to see what we can do around that. We're looking at how our HAS programs can be used in a more targeted way during holiday periods for supporting children. There is an employer drive at the moment to also think about how they can fund books for and reading and developing reading. So there's a lot of work on that. This funding is targeted for either 16 to 18s or 17 to 24 year olds.
Thank you. Just a quick point again, sorry. The activities that we've mentioned, the STEM one, fabulous. I went on one for design and eco classrooms, and honestly, it was like the best thing and like one of the biggest things I remember from school. So like, I'm chuffed that that's still happening. Like, it's really cool. Side note, Councillor Hudson, you want to?
I'm just going to refer to the table, what you presented, what's not actually in it, and you've said that you will distribute.
Yes.
If I was to contact you and ask for the data for Chaddeston North, but with a few changed variables, have you got the facility to actually do that?
I don't know. I'd have to go back.
If I was to, for instance, say, can I see the same data, but with an exclusion of those educated out of the Chaddeston area? Could you provide that data?
I don't know.
If you get where I'm going,
I do know.
Because the data could end up changing if you started.
Depending on where they're educated.
Yeah.
If you send me an email, I will see, but I can't. I will explore whether it's possible, because it means pulling from different data sets in order to.
I'm intrigued what the gap is if you was to filter those educated out of the area.
Okay, it requires this to look at different things.
Yeah.
A couple of buttons on the keyboard.
Would be lovely, but that's what
that would be
Get a PhD student. Yeah, get an undergraduate to do his dissertation.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Ashby covered a lot of sort of my main element at the point, really. But I remember being year 6 on the approach to SATs, and one of the people that was in my class, I remember him saying out loud that my dad said that SATs don't matter. The only thing that matters is GCSEs, so I'm not doing any revision for them. By the time it got to GCSEs, it was far too late for him to care at all what his GCSE results were. My parents went the entire opposite way. SATs were everything, and then GCSEs were everything, and then A-levels were everything, and then university was everything. there are some parents who are of the belief that doing something practical matters, doing something behind a desk is a waste of time. I remember going on a visit to one school in Derby, I won't say which one, who said that there is, amongst a certain group of parents, there's a belief that no boys over the age of 13 should be in school. They should all be out there on a building site or out there doing something practical. There are other parents who believe that if you don't go to uni, you failed. An apprenticeship is a failure. And both those ideologies are wrong, really, because it's about what the individual child wants to do and where they see themselves going. Using the employers that we've got, how do we sell sort of almost individually to parents, whether it's by a certain group or certain beliefs they have about education, that this route is as good as something else because it would provide this, or this route's as good because these are the employers that are backing it. How do we individually tailor and target things to ensure that as many people as possible, whatever their beliefs about the importance or lack of importance of education schooling is, we can take them on that journey with us?
So really good points. By having different route maps and showing where you can stop on and stop off, but not just making it the big employers, making it the supply chains. So I think about all of those businesses down Osmaston Road and thinking, okay, then how are we targeting? Because there's lots of people who do not want to work, can't see themselves in Toyota or Rolls or wherever. How do we get the others involved? So the Employer Summit and the tier ones, the anchors, are going to be engaging with all of their supply chains to say, well, what are you doing to open up your doors? But for some parents, they'll see that as a real tangible opportunity. For other parents, they really will like health and social care being redesignated pre-med. So it is about making sure careers advisors have got the information, making sure we have careers events, publish, communicate. Social media, I have no idea how to use social media. Other people do. So social media and using that to say this is available, this is come and talk to. Having the Rolls-Royce and its supply chain outside of Derby County Football Club on a Saturday afternoon, not my idea. But we'll go a long way to raise for some yes and no GT using the screen. We've got, we're debating about how we can get the screen at the football club, and in every single hospital, we have all the screens. When you're sitting waiting, having some information flowing through, because it is about that messaging, isn't it? And landing. It's a lot of work to do, and a big journey to go on.
Any other comments? Yes, I do.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Firstly, having been to the Derby Palace meeting, I think it's fantastic to see how orchestrated the endeavours are in taking a growing child and nurturing them into something that's not only an asset to society, but also to provide for themselves and families. And following on from that, just wanted to know, how do you aim to make sure that those opportunities genuinely reach those children who are not particularly inclined or as connected, such as the children that aren't care experienced or have special education needs?
We're really lucky for both care experience and special educational needs, because we've got key contacts and workers to target. But we can't target all those that don't have. So this is where schools are really important, and make sure that we link it through schools. Linking it to parents are even more important, because I'm really lucky I can go on holiday now during term time. What disappoints me is seeing how many children are all playing as well. And my husband keeps sitting there saying, Sharon, shut up. No. There is something about that belief. I do think if you've got people who've done it and can say, I went to an alternative provision and I'm now this. You can do it if you so choose, but you need, and it is that role modelling, and it is about young people talking to other young people. If you develop agency amongst young people themselves, they will walk with their feet and they will go. And it is about supporting parents to not feel unsafe by those decisions that their children are taking, because they can't see it or haven't understood it. And it was, I look back at I frequent a fish and chip shop on London Road. That one day a young woman stood behind me and was just overjoyed. She was in her early 20s. She'd got a job at Rolls Royce's and she'd just lost her she'd just previously lost her job at another vehicle maintenance organisation. And the interesting thing was, she said, nobody in my family ever thought any of us would ever work at night doing it. And I was made up of it. And I didn't know that. I didn't know who she was. But it was just, I felt very privileged that she wanted to tell me this on a Friday night. And so how we can get people like her saying, I've done it, you can do it.
Chair, Councillor Park first, sorry.
So basically you're saying, I mean, pardon me, I've not picked it all up correctly, but you want to recognise what young people want to do sooner. Because I've always thought, I'm old enough, I went to a grammar school, so I'm really old school. But so they were just hammering you that really you were supposed to be going on to university, and I'd never got that aspiration at all. So there was many a lesson I just sat there like that. And I think that's the problem with a lot of younger people today. They're being taught things that are never going to, in their opinion at that time, be any use to them. I mean, with me at the time, history and French was not something that I wanted to do. But I went on, when I left school, with very few qualifications. I went on to be a motor mechanic, and I reached the very top that I could, short of going to university again. I could have gone that way because I was doing something I was interested in. But at school, the lessons that you had to choose, you got to choose some to take at A levels and O levels. And trying to make somebody learn something that they don't want to learn is not the way forward, is it? You have to find out earlier what they're interested in, because I'd have loved to have done something like metalwork and woodwork and things to do with my hands, rather than sit there writing page after page of stuff that I never ever read again. And that's the sort of aspiration that you're trying to achieve, is it not?
It's a combination. So, we've got schools who are incredible trying to think about how they engage with their young people in different ways. If they've got the opportunity to offer different routes, whether you want to be academic, whether you want to go down a vocational route, but at the same time develop those broader skills of learning in schools, whether that's from personal social development, sense of agency of who you are and where you are in the world. There's no reason why our schools can't do all of that. They need to be able to do it. So it's not an either or. I think it's both.
Yeah, I just want to say the final comment. Sorry, I just wanted to make a comment really that I think what ought to be inherent in this, these projects, initiatives, schemes, etc., is tackling underperformance, underachievement in our education system. I think if we're able to just have a go at tackling perhaps some of these difficulties, issues, lack of aspiration on the part of children, perhaps, might be solved. And I think we need to be very, very careful about demonising parents. I think the education system should be about supporting parents, taking parents along with us rather than demonising them.
No, I totally agree with you. It's not about, it wasn't about that so much. It was about, if you can't make a connection with school, then you aren't in a position to be supportive as you possibly can. So it's incumbent upon us, as well as the education system, to do that connection. So I would agree with you.
So a bit of a throwaway comment that you made earlier. Are you actually looking at school term and school holiday times because I know a lot of teachers who have expressed that 6 weeks holidays is too long, the children are progressing during it. They want more spaced out holidays. I mean, Councillor Arnold and I were actually having this conversation before the meeting started, that actually if we had shorter holidays but more spaced out through the year, parents might not take their children out as much as they do now, because it would be, the holiday company wouldn't up the prices during the holiday period.
Yeah, I completely agree. So last year we put out to a consultation to do just that, and it came back overwhelmingly no.
Really?
Yes. So it's also the problem that we have, that we can do that for maintained schools. We can't do that for trusts, because trusts set their own. So it is about the Department for Education taking a different view on school holidays. But one of the key issues that we have was that the predominant teacher response was no.
But then I only got small numbers, so yeah.
But there are some schools in Derby
that do,
and it makes a very big difference.
My son is off for 3 weeks.
And London,
yeah,
absolutely.
There's a massive, I think there are people massively for it, massively against it. It's quite a Marmite subject, I think. I don't think you're ever going to please absolutely everyone. So it's kind of going to be that over the next few years, seeing what happens. Schools that do it actually have been improved and stuff like that. So it's going to be a bit of an ongoing thing, but it is unfortunately a bit of a Marmite topic, I think, with the holidays. Thank you.
Just tell those holiday companies not to put up their prices.
That'd be lovely if we could write an email to Jen too.
That's all year round.
Let's have people and keep the prices all the same all year round.
Good on it.
Those who go in term time and end up paying more. No, it's fine. It's fine.
That's right.
I actually think thank you. I think the holiday companies will just change their tracks and they'll put prices up at different times, work it out. And they'll now people. I said earlier that educational aspiration and achievement is higher in Ireland. We had much longer holidays. I have always felt so sorry for my children in the school holidays, because in Ireland we had 2 to 4 weeks longer summer holidays than you do in England. And I still feel sorry for the children of my grandchildren. So, and educational achievement is higher. So I don't think it's necessarily, I don't know. I understand the argument, but I don't like Marmite. But thank you, Sharon, because it's really good to hear of the really concrete work you're doing to try and make changes. So thank you for that.
I can only thank the people involved, and especially our involving in schools and parents and people really thinking differently. Thank you as well.
We'll definitely we'll see what happens in a year and bring you back and see what's happening at that time. I think Derby Primary is something we've really looked at in detail like we have today. So perfect. Thank you so much, Sharon. So just the last thing on our agenda is just work programme. So next meeting, we've got quite a big meeting. We've got CIC placements, homeschool travel, and childcare and family information. Is there anything anybody else wants to add to that, or any suggestions that they'd like to raise? Or
is it too early to bring to this committee the recently launched hybrid vocational academic qualification that was launched today?
Launched today, V-levels.
E-levels.
That's probably a little bit too early.
It's too early to find out what
I need to understand where it's going
and when it's going to be actually implemented. Okay, right. But that's for something for the future, I suppose. Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for attending, and we'll end that.
Isn't it? Horrible.